Mr. Mayer, welcome.
Thank you, Gunther.
For starters, are we seeing a lot of farmers going broke?
We're seeing farmers in dire need of rain, and we're seeing some farmers under extreme stress situations at the moment. It's ironic we're sitting here and it's the warmest day of the warmest year in 23 years.
That obviously means that if they had to plant now, it would come to naught.
100%.
So that means the coffers are running dry for the farmers. What can they do about it?
We're basically saying as Nedbank is do not put your balance sheet on a roulette table. It's not something to gamble with. So if you do not have essential moisture in the soil, do not plant. And we're seeing it already. It's already happening. We have had some confirmations of farmers saying they're not planting this season. They're trying to conserve what they have in the soil. And the Crop Estimate Committee has actually confirmed that number, saying that the intention to plant is about 4% less than what we planted last year.
Only 4%?
4% provided that it rains. All is not lost yet. So we've got a planting window that will still be open for another 2 weeks or so, depending on which part of the area of the country you are in. The northwest generally has got a bit of a bigger window still left, but it's not looking good at this point in time.
But if you don't plant, you can't sell. And then if you can't sell, you can't pay the existing loans.
You have a problem. So that is the scheme in terms of carryover debt. We work on carryover debt as a percentage of total production value of the land. Now, land is worth different things to different people. You have game area management, you have cattle grazing areas, you have maize producing land. So if that's the productive value of the land and we discount that, we look at that saying, going forward, will the farmer then in a normal rainfall year be able to repay at least some part of that loan on an amortizing basis?
Is there something that could be put in place in case the rain doesn't fall?
Gunther, we're trying to keep farmers on the land. I think that's critical for everybody to understand. A commercial bank does not want to sit with a lot of farmland. It's a disastrous and it's a vicious circle in terms of trying to sell land on a fire sale.
Yes.
The value just obviously goes down and down as you go along. So we're trying to do everything we can. And it's also a dialogue we have to have with government. Having that discussion with them, saying, shouldn't we work together to keep our farmers on our land?
Speaking of that, how much is government bringing to the table?
We've been quite surprised by the almost refreshing approach that government has. I mean, they've already gone as far as to declare 4 of the provinces as disaster areas in terms of the drought. 2 weeks ago, they set up the Interministerial Committee for reaction to the drought. It's headed by Minister Pravin Gordhan. And we have been approached by several non-government associations and actually some of the NGOs saying, what can we do? We're acting on basically on instruction of the government. What can we do to assist you as commercial banks? And remember, commercial banks' exposure to agriculture at this point in time is in the region of about 94 billion rand. It's up 14% from last year. So we need to realize that we are the main funders into this sector, and I think it's important for us and for food security for South Africa as a whole to maintain that position and make sure we keep the farmers on their land. So government in terms of that is coming to the party. We've already seen some indications of food relief, of aid for cattle, lucerne and other protein being purchased.
Yes.
In the Free State there's a request for 77 million for protein for their cattle. And the last thing you want to see is animals dying because of the drought. So we are working with government to see if there's something we can do together.
So there's a lot of plans in place that can basically stretch out the survival period. But that stretched survival period, if we don't get relief, how long will that be?
You can plant the best cultivars of the best seeds that has been certified drought resistant. If it doesn't rain, you will sow zero. There's no point in even starting up the tractors. So in terms of this, we're looking at normally exporting 2 million tons of maize out of the country. This season, we're looking at importing 770,000 tons of maize at a value of a region about 2.2 billion rand. It's dire straits. We're looking at inflation, obviously, in terms of food inflation. That basket is 14.2% of the total basket, just the food portion of it. That's going to go up. I mean, that is having a severe impact, especially in terms of certain areas of the economy. 2.8 million families, that's about 19% of South Africa's population, currently directly impacted by the drought. It's a dire situation, and all we can do is sit here and hope for rain.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Gunther.
There we have it, Zhaan Mayer from Nedbank CIB. Well, if you're a farmer, I suppose you better go talk to your bank.
Gunther from the JSE, thank you very much. Well, on the back of that Tshwane emergency